Okay, welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us today. We'll be starting in about 4 minutes. So thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks. So Kevin, you were saying something about the article that you just recently put out?
Yeah, I just recently wrote a blog, and basically I challenged my audience of 70,000 people that if you were to put together a list of 10 people's lives that you would like to live, who would be those 10 people? And just some of the ones on my list: Jesus was at the top, Madonna was next, Paul McCartney, Michael Jordan, Mahatma Gandhi, Nelson Mandela. Yeah, I had a lot of fun with it. Oh, and Reinhold Messner, who you probably don't know, he's one of the most accomplished high altitude mountaineers. I think he's successfully summited all of the mountains above 28,000 feet, which is pretty amazing.
Wow. Yeah. So what were the reasons why you chose some of those individuals?
Well, Madonna, I think, she reinvented herself. Her marketing was incredible, but I also and unlike most men, I wanted to experience what it's like to give birth, and she had children, so.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
You really want to experience that?
I do. I'm envious that men don't get to experience that, to bring a life into the world.
You really don't.
I knew you'd say that.
We hand the mantle to you.
Yeah, Sabine, you're a mom.
Yeah, you really don't.
Well, welcome everybody. We'll be starting in a couple of minutes. Thank you for joining us today on our webinar. Today is June 10th. If anybody wants to know what day it is. For a while there, I was like, what day is it? I don't even know.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah, it's great to write those articles. I need to write some more.
Yeah. So Sabine, do you have summer plans? Are you?
We usually travel at the end of the year for New Year's or Christmas. We go outside of the country, but in the summer we stay local. Jersey Shore, upstate New York. It's so hot in the Northeast in the summer. It doesn't make sense to go anywhere else. And my son always wants to go to the beach. He said, when it's cold, let's go where it's warm. If it's warm here, why are we going anywhere? So with the change, the pandemic, I think we're going to do a little road trip. Maybe get a Winnebago or a RV or something, because I'm worried about public hotels and bathrooms, and do something like that, because the pools are closed in New York City. There are no pools. So far, the beaches are limited. If you can use the beach, you have to live locally near the beach. My brother does live on Long Island, Nassau County, so we can take advantage of his pass if we choose to. So there is an advantage there, but it's local, and he plays basketball. So AAU basketball. They started his season, which is going to be really short, only 4 tournament games, but we'll probably be doing a lot of that this summer. That'll be within our travel plans, because he's been dying to play. He climbs the fence into the school to play basketball. That's how desperate he's been, because there's nowhere to play.
Well, thank you. Well, I am about to get us started. So hello, everyone, and welcome to today's discussion around people strategy and meeting some of our leading experts in discussing times of recovery past the COVID-19, as well as our current environment and national unrest that we've been experiencing. So thank you for joining us today. My name is Shar Miller, and I'll be your host today. I work as a talent management consultant with Comp Team, and I'm also a founder and owner of a company called Rocky Mountain Health Advocates, and I also provide career coaching called HR with a Heart. And I'm very pleased to be co-sponsoring today with Sam Reeve, who's the CEO and founder of Comp Team, and also Lisa Jackson, who's a keynote speaker and a cultural change expert with Corporate Culture Pros. So today I'm very excited to announce our speakers today. First, our guest speaker today is Sabine Marcellus. She's performance and team building strategist and a leadership advisor. So happy to have you join us today, Sabine. And also, you'll be speaking today with Lisa Jackson. And then I'm also excited to introduce Kevin Sheridan. And he's a keynote speaker and employee engagement and virtual management expert. So we're very thrilled to have Kevin Sheridan. And everyone's bios and information will be on compteam.net, so you can see more information about our guest speakers today. So to discuss what we're going over today, our first topic is listening to understand and engage people. So Sabine and Lisa will have a very engaging discussion about that. And then Kevin will discuss employee engagement and the virtual economy. So Kevin and myself and team will have an engaging dialogue about engagement and virtual economy. And lastly, we'll be going over an open discussion and question. So before we start out and kick off today's speakers, I just want to go over some logistics of how our session will go today. First of all, our discussions will be available on demand and recorded on compteam.net. So all of our recordings from our HR forums and people strategy forums will be found there. Also, you'll notice on compteam.net, we have everything like the attachments and GIFs and very helpful information. And then you'll also see that we have our future webinars posted on there. So we highly encourage you to attend. We offer every week these people strategy forums at 10 a.m. Mountain Time. So all over the place. So please attend those. And then also during the call today, we would really appreciate if you could participate. So please participate in the chat, in the Q&As. Our team is watching for your commentary and your questions and valuable insight. And we'd love to engage during and at the end of our session today with your feedback and information. And again, I just want to remind you, this session today is recorded on compteam.net, and we really highly encourage that please share these forums with your colleagues, various social media outlets, LinkedIn, etc., and continue to invite. These are free, and we find this a very valuable resource. So without further ado, I'd like to kick off today's session with Lisa Jackson and Sabine Marcellus, listening to understand and engage people. So thank you.
Thank you, Shar. It's great to be here. I wanted to just kick off this discussion today with a couple of framing up moments of truth. So I believe that, you know, when I was thinking about how to approach this conversation, that we've been talking about employee engagement in the workplace now from a cultural standpoint for close to 20 years as a topic. And, you know, Gallup's research has suggested that that has not moved the needle truly on employees' self-reporting of engagement in the workplace. And that in and of itself has some, I think, underpinnings that I want to address. I also feel that we're being called to listen in a new way, especially with the events that are happening in our country. First and foremost around George Floyd's death, and I want to not make this conversation about that per se, but I do want to shine the spotlight today on how we can listen in a new and different way, and especially with our Black colleagues in the workplace who I believe deserve to be listened to in a way that perhaps they have not been. And so I want to just really address the engagement piece from that angle of how it creates, how we create space for people to truly engage, rather than looking at engagement as something that is an outcome of just having the right tactics in place in your workplace. So let's take a look at the next slide, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the foundation of engagement. Some of you may recognize this model or framework if you have studied Patrick Lencioni's work. This came from his book, The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. And what I wanted to point to here is the importance of trust as the foundation of all results that a business is looking for. When I go into an organization, I'm doing culture work, I am often sort of starting out with the conversation of what do you really want the culture work to deliver? So what is the outcome? Why bother with culture? Why are we doing this? It's not just for the purpose of it being a good thing to do. CEOs in particular, who are usually the first set of conversations I'm having are with the C-suite, are looking for accountability. They're looking for stronger results. I hear those kind of words all the time with relation to culture, and my culture work is all about high performance and developing a performance culture. But it's also really important to understand where that begins, that we are human beings, and it begins with our feelings of trust with each other, with the leaders that are leading our companies. So that's kind of where we're going to begin today's conversation. And what forms trust in an organization is the absolute ground zero for what creates engagement. So that's where I invited my colleague Sabine to join me. She and I have worked together for the past 2 years with a organization that is an essential business, a health plan in the New York City area that serves the poorest people that are on Medicaid. When I joined this organization as their culture strategist, I believe it took all of about 1 hour for Sabine to hunt me down and tell me she was all in for whatever we were going to be doing around culture. So she and I have been partners in crime in this turnaround with this organization, which was really on its last breath when I arrived, or when our team arrived, and has made a pretty remarkable journey. So we're going to have this conversation together. Thank you so much, Sabine, for taking time out of your, I know, very busy day to be with us today.
Thank you for inviting me. Thank you.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to your very strong voice in this conversation. So let's take the next slide, and we're just going to keep this fairly simple, posing really this topic of how do we listen to understand and engage people? So what is a deeper level of listening? What's a new level of listening look like? And I really want us to consider these topics as well in the chat, so that this voice that we're putting forth, Sabine and I, is also echoed by all of you who are listening today. What does it take to create this sense of trust in an organization that leads to that performance and engagement? So the first topic we're going to discuss is just the importance of psychological safety. If you have an idea of what creates it or sustains it or restores it in your organization, please post that up in the chat now. But I want to hear from Sabine on this topic, because I've listened to a lot of, I have my own rhetoric and ideas about it, but I've listened to a lot of what she said and have really appreciated just sharing your story, Sabine, of how that journey was made, you know, with the organization that we've worked in.
Well, what I'd say is, in order to have that type of confidence, you have to first show that you care. I think showing that we care about our employees is one of the key components in psychological, I'm sorry, I missed the word, in confidence in our company. For example, when the pandemic took place, COVID-19, I felt many employees felt that the company was slow to move in sharing their confidence or showing that they cared about the employees. They waited a long time to even address that we were in the midst of a pandemic. And they waited a long time. New York,
right? This is in
New York. This was New York, the epicenter. The epicenter of the pandemic in America. They were very slow to move. It almost felt like they didn't even acknowledge that there was something going on. You go home every day and you'd see the news and what was going on around the world, and they just didn't address it. They waited a long time to allow or even announce to the employees that they can work remotely. As an essential company, technically our offices did not close, but many employees traveled by public transportation. Yeah. Many employees had small children. Many employees live with elderly parents, and some also had pre-existing conditions that put them at high risk. But they never said, hey, I'm aware that you have this condition, or this is your situation at home. If it's possible, work from home remotely. If not, let's try to set you up for that. And it made the employees feel that they didn't care about their health. They didn't care about their well-being.
So that's also just interesting point to that, Sabine, that isn't just about psychological safety. That was literally about your physical safety, right?
Absolutely.
So there's this very, very baseline kind of feeling that I am not being protected or cared for by my organization, right? But how does that translate to the psychological safety to speak up? So you spoke up with me, you know, and that
I did.
was
I spoke up with you, and when they finally addressed the issue and everyone was home, we immediately received an email that was reminding us that, hey, you know, you're working from home. This is just remember to remain busy or productive. You don't allow this. And rumor is that the word that was used was, this is not a coronation, which is very insensitive.
a coronation.
Coronation, which was very insensitive to those that did have issues, because I know I felt some anxiety when I came home. I know the last thing I wanted to do was really sit in front of a computer and work. I wanted to just climb into my bed and cover my head because I didn't know what to do. My son was home. I do have elderly parents that I have to take care of. I was concerned about health, and I felt like the message wasn't received well. It wasn't delivered in a way that said, hey, we're all in this together. It could have been that, hey, we know that you're stressed. This is an unknown, and we have high expectations of you, but take care of yourself and do your best work, versus remain busy, remain productive, you know, not be idle. And that definitely sent a negative message to us that they really didn't care. You're really just a workhorse at this point. You know, we were more concerned with production than the employee's safety and health.
And so, yeah, we had that conversation, and then I escalated that to some of the internal leadership within the organization. And, you know, I mean, I felt in that situation, so we're talking about psychological safety here, that there wasn't really the context for you to be able to kind of raise that flag yourself. And
I did.
I had came to that conclusion by just you know, we've been measuring the employee engagement through a number of methods at this company, but one of them was a survey that includes, do I trust my organization? Do I trust my leaders? And those scores have repeatedly, even in the face of a lot of work having been done on the culture, were still very low. Employees were rating the trust score as very low. And so that is a pretty important connection, I think, with the psychological safety that we're talking about. What creates, sustains, and restores it is people trust. If I speak up, something will either change, or I'll at least feel like I was being heard. So we together kind of had that conversation, escalated the conversation, and then talk a little bit about what you experienced after that. And
right, I did speak up. I responded in an email that I was really unhappy with how they addressed it. And what happened after that, the emails started changing. There were yoga sessions in midday for meditation, mindful meditation. We started getting more emails about different organizations you can reach out to if you felt some anxiety, if you needed assistance. So I think they got the message that it was important to have the employee feel that you care about them, then you would get the best work from them. I think at the end of the day, you have to show some sensitivity, and it's a fine line. And you want to make sure that you're aware that there is production, a high performance that's expected from your employees. But at the end of the day, you really want them to know that you care about them personally. There is that personal connection that's really needed. And on the flip side, I'm just going to move a little forward. When now we're home in a pandemic, and all of a sudden our country is in an uproar over race relations and racism in the country. And I think that they learned their lesson, in that they responded in this situation much quicker, with much more care, that they're aware of the situation. So the lesson was learned that they didn't do what they were supposed to do, because I have a feeling that I wasn't the only person that voiced my unhappiness with how this health crisis was addressed. And then when the race crisis came up, they were quick to respond. Our CEO released a message immediately, letting us know that we're all in this together. This is unacceptable. We're not a company that supports this mindset, you know, especially with the group of people that we serve. We serve a underserved minority community. So that really changed the whole dynamic that existed, that they, you know, the lesson was learned, and people did feel it. You know, they did say, hey, we're glad that showed that they cared, you know, that we're in this together, because this is something really, really big. And a big transition.
Absolutely. And just to be clear, this is an organization that is, I believe, 80% minority. So the organization's employees, it's not just the people that, the customers that the health plan serves, but the organization itself is 80% Black, Hispanic, of Asian descent, Asian country descent. And so this has been a theme in this organization. And I want to move to kind of the second piece of this, how to avoid stimulating polarity while allowing healthy debate. If you look at the, if you remember the previous pyramid slide that I showed, one of the steps in building trust, in getting to results and accountability, is the fact that you have to go through some form of conflict. And that generally that's just the human way of moving to commitment, is that we've got to be able to get things out on the table, and debate the issues in a healthy way. And so when we're talking about creating trust and safety, how do you engage healthy debate in ways that do not sort of create polarity, right? And I thought it would be interesting to talk a little bit about that, Sabine, from this angle of, you know, as we work to change the culture with this organization, one of the big concerns and the thing that people felt, you know, safe enough to say, at least in writing through the surveys, was that we don't have equal chance to be promoted in this organization. So I just mentioned that there's 80% of the organization is minority population, yet most of the C-suite is white. And so we were wanting to just discuss and model, how do we have that conversation and debate without creating these polarity positions? And this is something that may feel a little bit sensitive to all of you, but I thought it would be a really good conversation for Sabine and I to have, because we were talking about it kind of on, you know, casually on our own offline. Let's just move to the next slide, and Sam, and so we can kind of have that question up on the table. So how do you avoid stimulating polarity while allowing for healthy debate?
I think first there should be a willingness to listen. You said that earlier or early on. At this point in our country, people are being aware that this is a serious issue, that a lot of people don't know what's really going on, that they're not aware that there is systemic racism that exists in this country. And you have to be uncomfortable. There has to be an uncomfortable conversation. And I mentioned earlier that if you're not uncomfortable, you're not going to want change. And I think people have been too comfortable with things the way that they are, the way that they've been, and thinking that there was okay and it worked. And not be silent. First, listen, ask questions. You know, we're here to share information. And in our company, 80% of the employees are a minority. The majority, I think 70% are African American. And we make up less of the leadership. How can you lead a group of people if there's none of us there at the table to provide input and knowledge? And many are skilled in these areas, but we're just not seen. It's because of this model that's existed for so long, this model that's existed since slavery, where there's a small group that is at the top, that leads, that instructs, and this other group is the worker and is there just for economic and textile and just to work. And now they're also capable of doing more. And if you're uncomfortable and ask those questions, they'll be answered. At the end of the day, we just want equality. We just want to be heard. We just want to be able to sit there and have our voices heard and share in what we built for this country. We all helped to make America great. The Black, the white, the Asian, we all work together. And we just want to be able to have a seat at the table at this point. And when you listen and you ask the questions, you share the information, and then you can look at your company and find out where you can change. Do you need to develop some of these employees to build their skills? Or maybe they already exist and you don't know that they're there. I'm gonna give you a quick example that just came to mind. In the disparity that exists between the white and the Black employees. One white employee, a white employee and a Black employee, both have the same skill set. Both would like this position to be a supervisor or manager. Requirement is to have a college degree. Neither of them had it. The white employee was given the promotion with the understanding that you get the job, but in the meantime, you're required to go to school and get the credentials needed to keep this position. On the flip side, for the Black employee, she was told, well, you need a degree before you can have the position. Why were the rules different? for both employees. They both had the same skill. They both were doing the same job. These are disparities that exist. Why is the rule so different for the other person when we're doing the exact same thing and have the same skill? And this is why we felt like the rules have to be changed. The rule has to be the same for everyone. Everyone must be given the same opportunity to grow.
And that discomfort that you described earlier, I think, is the place that we need to all feel that. We need to, I mean, I have had conversations with you about this particular subject, just how do we create more visibility around allowing people to, in the succession planning process to be truly colorblind, right, in any organization. But the discomfort, and I will just speak to the fact that you and I were having a conversation at one point a couple of weeks ago about it wasn't a full couple of weeks ago, it was a week ago, about just your feelings about what had happened with George Floyd. And it was so deeply uncomfortable for me to witness you in that and your pain and the pain of it, because I felt helpless. I felt like, what am I supposed to do? And yet that's as you pointed out, a very privileged position for me to be in, right? To be able to have my discomfort and just sit with my discomfort. And I think even though this may not be maybe this is a controversial or discomforting subject to bring up on a webinar like this, but I felt in that moment so empowered by the idea that I know this, I'm a culture change expert. Discomfort is the prerequisite for change. And we do need to feel it without allowing that discomfort to become something that we cover up or gloss over or somehow, sweep under the carpet once again. So I'm really, really glad that you spoke to that particular piece about, polarity to me means that we have even the opportunity now to put this goal on the to avoid stimulating polarity. We have to have a shared goal. We have to have some kind of shared common goal. And that's where a healthy debate about the different points of view of what is it that we've either done or not done, to create, in this case, equality and equal.
The shared goal is equality. If
Yeah.
our shared goal is equality, then we have to move forward. I know someone posted on the comments that bias exists in all of us. And that's something that we have to be willing to admit. Yes, the bias exists that my son expects that if he walked into a room, and this literally happened, we went on vacation and everyone else was white at the pool, he was reluctant to go to the pool because he felt like he was going to experience racism. And that kind of prevented him from being comfortable enough to speak up or even voice his opinion. And on the flip side, the African American is seen as, in a negative point of view, as thieves and criminals and lazy. These are truths that exist for us, that when we're looked at, we're looked this way. And this is not who we are. We're hard workers. And we have to remind this country that we worked hard to build this country. America was built on our backs. So we're not lazy. We want to work. But if we're not given the opportunity and we're prejudged as something else, it's unfair. And also on our part as African Americans, we have to get past our fear. Being afraid to speak up and being judged. Oh, you spoke up as a woman, or you're angry. No, it's not so much angry. It's just frustration. For me, when this incident happened with George Floyd, I wasn't only angry, I was just so disappointed, and so sad that in the year 2020 in America, that this is still happening. And it's okay. It was televised and it was okay. And it's not okay. So having that discomfort on both sides, even saying how I feel is uncomfortable for me, because I feel like it might distance people or make you want to go further away. But what I want you to understand is this is my pain, and this is what you understand, that you don't see it. And let's get to the middle. How can we even it out? How can we get to a point that we're all on the same page together? And that has to be an uncomfortable conversation first. Once we get past the discomfort, then everything works out after that. Then we're coming to a working agreement and understanding with each other, as we use that word, working agreement, where we're going to say, this is the steps that we're going to take so that everyone is equally represented, and build a new contract, because the old contract that existed was broken. It was never respected. Work for 400 years for free. Then for 50 years, We were told we could earn it, and we still can't get a seat at the table. Now let's rewrite the contract with each other.
And that is really the answer to it, that we have, certainly I have had those conversations in many boardrooms of people who don't even necessarily share the goal of equality, right? So I'm oftentimes having those conversations as the only woman in the room. So I know what it means to also have, bear witness to the fact that an entire boardroom of people is,
from a gender perspective,
is pretty homogenous, right? And I'm not gonna.
It's a way of relating. You're trying to relate, and I don't want to make you feel like you're trying to relate is wrong, because you will never understand what it's like to be in my skin. That's right. Not something that you'll ever understand. But being able to have empathy and find a common ground, a way to understand, is a good step. I say that's a way of trying. That you're close, but you'll never get there. It's that multiplied by 7,000, and maybe you'll be close to what it feels like.
Right. Well,
to be in that skin. But then wanting to change is what's the most important thing. Wanting to make that change, not just doing things, not just taking a knee, not just wearing the Kenta cloth, not just posting, really having a vested interest in evening out the playing field. That's all we want, is equality. That's it.
That was really what I took away from the conversations that we've had, was that I want to, you said to me directly, we cannot do this alone.
No.
And I really understand that, because I looked at how did the women's movement make more progress over the last 50 years than the Black Lives Matter movement. And both of those were happening as I was very young. But I remember both the civil rights movement and the women's movement were happening simultaneously. And I feel it is really important to be an ally to Black Lives Matter right now, in a way that you feel just exactly what you said, that we're raising the awareness and the discomfort around the lack of equality in our country. And it needs to be a spotlight on, we can't continue to act as though that progress has been made that has not been made. Even though there has been progress, it's not enough. It's not equality yet. It's not truly represented as equality.
I couldn't have said it better.
Yes, you could. Because we are not equal in our voice.
But that's what it takes. That's what it takes. Really going in and just turning the tables around, saying that, oh, there's too many, like really doing the hard stuff. There cannot be 8 white, 1 Asian, 1 Black person in the boardroom when 70% of the population of the employees are minorities. That's not a balance. That's not fair. And we're not all the same. That's the other thing. Not every single Black person thinks the same way or wants the same thing. That's why there are women, there are men, there are tall, there's different types of people. It has to be an even representation of your community, of the group. And then there's equality. Then I can agree that every voice is being heard, everyone's being represented. And there isn't a ruling class and then the workers. Because that's how it feels to a lot of employees, that I'm only here to work. Like that employee that wanted the promotion, she felt that, hey, that's discriminatory. Why does she get the option to go to school and have the position? And I'm doing the exact same thing. And I'm told I got to get a degree first. But that's how it happens sometimes. So
yeah, absolutely. Hello, Sam.
Hey.
Hi, Sam.
Engaging conversation, a lot of good topics there. Yeah, I just wanted to say one thing that I think that is really important, as you mentioned, Sabine, is just having the comfort to speak up and having that safety for employees to be able to speak up about their diverse positions on things. I don't think that we're ever going to move forward as a society unless we can hear from both sides of the conversation, even though that one side might be uncomfortable to hear, or both sides might be uncomfortable to hear. We're never going to come to a common place unless we are able to listen and be able to voice up of our opinions on why or why not something may be good or bad. So it's critical that we have these conversations. I think the past where we're saying, okay, well, we can't say that because it's not politically correct, or we can't say that because you're going to offend me, or is not helpful in having a conversation. I mean, we need to make sure that we can listen and then give feedback of why or why not something might be acceptable in different points of view. So
It's so true, Sam. And being offended, and I think people are afraid to be offended or offend. And if you are offended, you can say, hey, that's offensive to me, and say why it's offensive. Then there's the conversation.
yeah.
Now the conversation exists, and now we can correct it, because sometimes people say things and they're not intentionally being offensive. They're ignorant of it. For example, Lisa had an incident at a town hall. It was coming, and she made a statement that I'm not going to repeat that was taken as offensive. And she was written off. Like, I was looking at her on the stage. I said, this is the last day I'm going to see this lady, because she is gone. But I understood, unlike others, that it came from a place of ignorance. She had no idea that what she said was so deep seated, and they were so offended by it. And eventually I addressed it with her, and I told her, let me tell you what happened to you that day. And this is what they thought. And this is why so many people have written you off. And when you tried to speak to them, they would look at you like, please, I don't want to hear anything from this woman. Yeah. But she learned from it. She realized what happened, and she was able to have the conversation, and people's attitude changed because Lisa acknowledged that, hey, this is what happened. I made a mistake. You know, I didn't know. But now I know, going forward, that's not going to happen again. And she has now become our ally, because she had no idea that that's what happened with her statement. Because it happens. People say things all the time. I can say things that are offensive. And, you know, just like white people can be offensive, Black people are offensive too. Please. I think we invented offensive. The snapback.
Along with great music.
Yeah. Well, I know that we could talk about this all day. It's a great.
Yes, we can.
I really would like to hear what Kevin has to say about the managing the remote workforce, and also there's issues that we need to talk about as far as how do we hear their perspective. I mean, with the remote workforce, I mean, more than ever, you know, those individuals are feeling, you know, isolated, you know, and their voices aren't heard. So how do we make sure that takes place? So I'm going to make sure that Kevin can join us here. Oh, there he is. Hi, Kevin.
And I didn't address that last point on my slide because I knew Kevin was going to be coming in with pretty robust topic there for discussion around the communication habits that do support understanding in a virtual world, because it's very, very different. So I really look forward to hearing the way that's going to unfold for this conversation as well. Thank you so much for everyone who's here listening and participating in the chat around this important topic.
And I just want to acknowledge Sabine. Sabine, I got to meet you just a few days ago, and I must say I'm so super proud of you, and the fact that you've stepped up as a leader in your organization and have really supported championing this change. And so super pleased you joined us today. Thank you so much for doing that.
Thank you for inviting me. Thank you.
Sure. So thank you. Well, at this point, I'm very pleased to introduce Kevin Sheridan, and he is going to share with us employee engagement and virtual management during time of economic recovery. Very excited to hear about the progressive and cutting edge ways of employee engagement in these changing times. So welcome, Kevin.
Thank you so much, Shar. I'm thrilled to be here and love the discussion about diversity and inclusion. As I shared with you before, as a white male, I had a gift given to me in that I was kidnapped and brought to an American Indian reservation and forced to go to a tribal school where I got beat up every day because of my white skin.
Wow.
I did not choose victimhood. I learned and I adapted. I actually learned Chippewa. I used to dance in the powwow for the white tourists.
Wow.
Yeah.
Incredible story.
So I wrote a book called The Virtual Manager 12 years ago, and never in my wildest dreams would I guess that that book would become even more relevant today than it was back 12 years ago. I'm going to cover what I want to achieve today. I'm a high altitude mountaineer. I'm on an athletic journey of doing the 7 summits, which is to climb the highest mountain on every continent. This is the highest mountain in Europe, which actually happens to be in Russia. So today I'm going to be what the Nepali people call the Chief Sardar, which is the Chief Sherpa. And I'm going to lead us to the world of virtual management and best practices. Our world has changed significantly. I'll also be covering what are the key drivers of engagement and what are some of the best practices on each of those drivers, and then introduce or reintroduce the concept of shared ownership for engagement. Too many organizations do the ubiquitous employee engagement survey and charge management with owning it, and that's okay, but it leaves the employee out of a very important position to say, I own it. I'll accept some responsibility for my own engagement. And then we'll close up with some final thoughts and takeaways. So pre-coronavirus, we were already very, very remote. 50% of the worldwide workforce was virtual. With the virus, suddenly you have hundreds of millions of people that were turned into virtual workers. And the important distinction between those two populations is these people didn't choose to be remote. They were forced to be remote. And both they and their employers are trying to get their arms around, what do we do? How does this situation be managed? How can I become a great virtual worker? How can I become a great virtual manager? I'm into social media a lot. Those of you that want to link to me on LinkedIn, I happen to know one of the founders of LinkedIn, so I got on the platform very early. In fact, I was the 7,000th member of LinkedIn. Feel free to check my website out. There's a lot of free resources that you could download that I'll make reference to in this presentation. Now, when I wrote the book, I dedicated chapter 2 to the most important as it relates to this virtual worker, virtual manager relationship. And I wish I had thought of this when I wrote the book, but I didn't. Back when the Russian government was doing nuclear disarmament with Ronald Reagan, he held a press conference in Washington, D.C., and he walked to the podium and he said, I hope I don't screw this up, but Novoprai Dovovoprai, which of course translates into English, trust but verify. This is the most important part of the relationship. You need to give people the freedom to succeed and then get out of the way and just track their outcomes. And if you're getting the outcomes that you wanted to achieve and they are leaving to go fly a kite, it doesn't matter. You're getting what you wanted. And if you discover that somebody's not going to be successful in the virtual world, you're not going to want to retain them as an employee. And I'm being asked to help companies with the unfortunate downsizings that have come with what we're going through. And you need to think carefully about what criteria should you use to downsize.
Well, that's an excellent point, Kevin. You know, when I was working in HR and talent management strategy for major companies, it was often many executive leaders were very reluctant to a telecommuting or teleworkforce due to the lack of trust that employees could manage their time effectively and be productive. And what I'm hearing today is employees are actually being more productive in the workforce now that we're doing more of a virtual environment, right?
Yes, absolutely. Gallup has a lot of really great data. They're a former competitor of mine because they were doing the employee surveys as well. But it's the irony of me being the author of The Virtual Manager is palpable because I was that old school manager. And without the coaching of one of my millennial employees, you know, I had now started staff hours. It's a staff meeting. It's like we work from 8 to 5 and everyone gets a 1-hour lunch. And Ashley comes into my office, my millennial, and she goes, "Can I talk to you?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And she shut the door, and I'm like, oh no. She goes, Kevin, do you trust the people that work here? I said, absolutely, I wouldn't have hired him. And then she looked me in the eye, Shar, and she said, let go. And I did. I absolutely let go. And I let my people, if they wanted to come in at noon, fine. If they wanted to go have ice cream in Millennial Park mid-morning, fine. As long as I'm getting the outcomes, it just doesn't matter. So I'm proud to say I made the transition from that old school manager to a future thinking manager and allowing virtual work. And indeed, Gallup proved that not only are virtual workers more productive, they actually put more hours in. 4 more hours per week.
Absolutely. Well, it's amazing that she felt safe to speak up and that you took the time to listen and actually take action. So that's incredible. What a change.
She was an amazing employee. I hired her to be my EA, and within 2 days, I was like, I got to promote her. She wound up as the head of our sales and marketing department. One of the best hires I've ever made. I thought I was going to lose her, and you know, I'm talking to her. I said, it's not always going to be like this. I know you're putting extra hours in. She put both hands in the air and she goes, Kevin, I grew up on a farm. When it's harvest time, it's harvest time. I'm like, can I hug you? Yeah, a farm girl from Minnesota. So, yeah. Just a remarkable.
Minnesotans.
Yeah. So, people are always asking, well, what does engagement really mean? Well, really 3 different definitions. Engaged employees feel a strong intellectual and emotional bond with their organization and its higher purpose. Second, they're ready to exert extra effort in their job. And third, they're willing owners of their own engagement. They say, I am responsible to some degree for my own engagement. That's the 3-fold definition. There's just not enough engagement in the workplace. Those of you that have seen the most recent Gallup data, what percent is it most up to date? 33%, only a third. This tells you, much like climbing one of these high altitude mountains, engagement is tough business. Now, the big cost of disengagement is that middle category. That middle category is 60%. They're not engaged and not disengaged. Those of the listeners that have watched the AMC show, The Walking Dead, like I did, these are your working dead. They're not productive and they're not engaged. So the 3 takeaways on how to get them re-engaged is they're not going to volunteer. By the way, you want to discover who's engaged. Ask for volunteers for a special project. These people will dive under conference room tables and hide behind podiums. So if you know they're not going to volunteer, you need to volunteer them. Char, you're on the committee. How do I get on the committee? Second way to engage these people is to absolutely give them a mentor, somebody who's one of your most wonderfully infectious, engaged employees. And thirdly, at least half of the 60% are in the wrong job. It's sad to me that so many people are going to work every day or staying and working from home, and they're just not passionate at all about what they're doing. I love what I do. And even though it's nice to get a speaking fee at my keynote events, the main objective I have is I want someone to come up to me afterwards and say, you just changed my life. And I get that regularly. So if you're not passionate about your job, think about getting a new one.
Well, I would say for the HR leaders and executive leaders on the line today, having a real thorough, robust talent management strategy that is beyond just having a employee engagement survey that happens only 1 time a year and is all about getting the participation rates up. That is not going to fix engagement. It needs to be a holistic approach about coaching and mentorship and hiring the right employees as well as our leaders. And so, yeah, excellent points.
That's a great segue, Char, because the biggest single mistake that companies make vis-a-vis virtual management is they hire the wrong people. Mm-hmm. In fact, 85% of the people are gone within a year. So I'm going to give you what I call the S characteristics. And this is what you want to look for in a virtual employee. Are they self-starting? I'll define that as somebody that doesn't need to be reminded to do their work, nor do they call their boss and say, hey, what should I be working on? They seek work. They should be self-motivated. And these people zero in on the task at hand. They're self-motivated individuals, are single-minded and focused on the task at hand. They have an extraordinary sense of purpose and are also lifelong learners. Third S quality, self-discipline. The term self-discipline implies organization, time management, and responsibility. It suggests you as the manager will be free from having to monitor them or look over their virtual shoulders. And the last S quality, self-sufficient. These are people who are highly extrovert individuals who can garner their own resources as opposed to asking for help or relying on others. They do not rely on a collegial atmosphere to get their energy. They can do this on their own. And also, you want good communicators. By the way, when you interview these people, you should interview them in the format that you'll be interacting with as a virtual manager. So if you're going to have a regular Skype call, interview them via Skype, see how they do. Are they good communicators? And the other thing as it relates to communication that I learned is these people that are working remotely feel very isolated. It's easy to get lonely. And one of the things I put in my book is that if you get an email or a message from somebody that really doesn't need a response, always respond, because that person is yearning to know that they were heard. That's so true of virtual managers.
Right.
Determine what the original magnet was. This is a Starwood Hotel best practice. In fact, if you check into a Westin, first time I saw this, I was like, that's awesome. They're wearing a little badge that says, Jennifer, my passion. They're allowed to say what their passion is. In this case, it was theater. And when I checked out of that Westin, I checked out the man and he had on his label, he said, my passion, money. I'm like, he's honest. So determine what was it that attracted them originally to your company and then keep feeding them more and more. Get feedback. End of the first day, how do we do? Anything we could do differently. Meet with them on a regular basis. Anything I could be doing differently as your manager. Get feedback early and often.
Right.
One way to do that is through new employee surveys, which are valuable.
So may I just mention this, you talked about really understanding the type of employee that you want to hire. And I think really analyzing each position, making sure it's a correct position, really analyzing the competencies, the capabilities, the skill sets, the talents that you need that is aligned to the business and the operations is so critical prior to even posting that opportunity, and then thinking of new and progressive ways of interviewing. I love the fact that you're talking about interviewing in the environment that's really going to apply. And then I want to tell a quick story is that when I was young, a long time ago, and about 21 years old, I was working at a restaurant, and they interviewed for something called Vita. And Vita is, life and vitality and hiring for people that could light up a room and really engage with clients and really be engaged with self-starting and customer service. And I didn't make a very great waitress, by the way, but apparently I had Vita. And so Vita's been my whole thing. If my email's called vita.vision, just because of that, because you need to hire the right people and have the right people in place, or else you're going to disengage the people that have engagement, right?
Absolutely. Well, when I go out to eat, I can tell whether my colleagues have been a food service worker. My first job was on a dishwasher at Mama's Bella Vista in Monaco, Wisconsin. That job was disgusting, but I worked really hard. And then the people in salad said, we want Kevin. And then the people in pizzas said, we want Kevin. And I slowly moved my way up the chain, and then I was trained at age 14 to be a head chef, and I was. So yeah, that was, you got to hire the right people. By the way, one of Ashley's great idea. She came to me one day as the head of marketing and sales. She goes, Kevin, we want to ask a unique question when we interview for these people, especially as they work remotely. I said, what's the question? She goes, what's your favorite candy? I said, why would you ask them that? She said, well, guess what we're going to ship them during their first week? Reese's Peanut Butter Cup.
Ah.
Yeah, is that awesome? That's commonly called the candy question. And of course, you want to send the candy out to everyone else on the team saying, hey, this is Ashley's favorite piece of candy. Why don't you enjoy that? And go virtually introduce yourself to Ashley while you eat your Reese's Peanut Butter Cup.
Just
Is that
make sure
awesome?
you don't melt in the mail.
Yeah. Well, I work with a company here that also discovered a great way to end the virtual employee's first day. They literally have a clap out where the person working near them will literally clap them out of the event or out of the meeting, Zoom meeting, if you will.
Ah,
Pretty cool.
that's cool.
Yeah. These are the drivers of engagement. When I was asked to write my bestseller, Building a Magnetic Culture, it was really an easy book to write because I just turned to my chief statistician. I said, I want you to run a key driver analysis. If we want to move the bogey on engagement, what are the most impactful drivers to move us to best in class? And he ran this, and of course, recognition is at the top. People are yearning for a thank you. There's a reason Dan Pink's book, Drive, was so effective because it talked about what motivates people. People want to be thanked. They also want to know where their career is headed. And they also want a manager that cares about them as a human being, not as a clog on the wheel of productivity. Well, Char, if you look at those top three drivers long enough, they meld into one thing. And Gallup, this is Gallup's main and most meaningful messages. It's all about the manager. Because who, after all, should be saying thank you? The manager. Who, after all, should be saying, hey, where do you want to be in 6 months and how can I help you get there? The manager. You want managers that are going to be genuine, but also know how to recognize people. The biggest problem with the driver number one is that recognition is inconsistent. And that Zig Ziglar quote, people often say that motivation does not last. Well, neither does bathing. That's why we recommend it on a daily basis. Also, how you recognize is critical. Saying thank you is okay, but it only gets you 20% of the value. What you want to do is three things. You want to say, Char, I saw what you did on that project. You really rocked it. You did really nice work. Secondly, I want to explain to you why what you did is so intrinsically important to our company. You're going to say to yourself, I'm going to do it again. You're going to try and replicate that behavior. Then I want to give something tangible. I just mailed you a gift certificate to the local Lombardi's restaurant. Take your family out for a nice meal. Again, thank you. Great job.
Excellent. Well, do you not think that some companies really focus on that top 10% or the top high performers doing these three steps? And back to Lisa and Sabine's topic, you know, why not recognize everyone? Doesn't everyone need recognition at all levels of the organization and not this slice of population in our organization, Kevin?
The answer to that is no, because some people just don't deserve to be recognized. A big mistake that companies make, they try to focus so much on recognition, they are recognizing mediocrity. Don't want to do that. You want to only recognize people that are above the curve, if you will, that are doing great work. And one best practice that I had, knowing that people forget, because I had all great intentions about recognizing my people when I had 43 employees, but you forget, you get busy. Well, here's a best practice. Put recognition in your Outlook calendar. Every Friday afternoon, I'd get a pop-up window, Kevin, go recognize. And I would physically walk over to the people that I manage saying, those three things that I just covered. Make recognition inescapable.
Yeah, I worked with the CEO at one of the healthcare systems. Actually, you and I both worked at that healthcare system.
Yes.
And the CEO said every week, every leader must handwrite at least 25 handwritten thank you notes to their
Nice.
employees.
That
And
is
that
the best.
was mandated.
Yeah, that's a best practice. Here are just
Sincere.
some ideas on what works in terms of recognition for virtual workers, e-cards, nominating remote workers for awards, face-to-face time. People want to be seen. Have a Zoom call, have a Skype call, record it, send it to them afterwards. Write those little thank you notes. What are not recognition twos? A paycheck, a holiday turkey or ham, birthday party, everybody gets one. Casual dress, that's the norm. I wrote a book about it. It's okay to attend a Skype meeting in your pajamas. It really just doesn't matter. Those are just some of the things you don't want to see as recognition tools. Being a great manager means holding yourself accountable. One great practice is just being genuine with your employees. One thing that you could do is say, hey, you know, my out of work passion is high altitude mountaineering. How about you, Char? What's your favorite hobby outside of work?
I like to decorate. I've been working on painting and decorating my office. That's what I like to do. So maybe it'd be nice to, or do watercolors. Maybe give me a set of watercolors.
So what I'll do is, knowing that, first of all, you're going to be impressed that I even asked you what your passion was outside of work. But then the next time I'm in a Barnes and Noble, if it exists, I'm going to go get some watercolors, and I'm going to leave it on your desk or ship it to you with a nice note saying, I thought you'd really enjoy that. That's the kind of stuff that great leaders are doing. They're also clearly communicating, this is what I expect of you. These are my expectations of your manager. And then in the chat room, I posted a comment, use the 3 most impactful workplace phrases. Thank you, I don't know, and I'm sorry. We all make mistakes. If you make a mistake, just own up to it. Just say, I am so sorry. And a great exercise that you could do is I call the best boss exercise. I want everybody on the call to think, who was the best boss you ever had in any job? And if you haven't thanked them, pick up the phone and say, you were the best boss I ever had. Then write down the 3 qualities that made them such a great boss, and then commit yourself to become someone else's best boss. See the power of that?
Absolutely. We tend to forget the best bosses of the past. It's so nice to re-engage and connect. We're all on LinkedIn now.
Yeah, absolutely. So as the owner of HR Solutions, we did the ubiquitous employee engagement survey, and I had a client in Atlantic City, New Jersey, best in class healthcare client. And he called me out because I was going to present the survey results to the executive team. He goes, I'll let you do your present. I need to talk to you, Kevin, because something's missing. So I went into his office and he closed the door and he goes, you know, I get it that my managers need to put together action plans from their survey results, but when does the employee begin to accept ownership for their own engagement? We've also almost set it up as a paternalistic model where the employee says, I filled the survey out, now you need to do this, then I'll become engaged. That's what I call conditional engagement. And much like conditional love, it's unhealthy and it doesn't work. So instead of viewing Rick's comment to me as, oh, here he's blaming us and we didn't provide a full solution, I listened. And I flew home that night, I'm like, he just gave us a gift. We are gonna be the first survey firm ever to allow for the employee to click a button at the end of the survey and get a private report showing them how engaged they are and giving them ideas on what they could do to become more engaged. So under the old model, it's like, I feel that I'm recognized when I do good work. Very strongly disagree. That doesn't work. And how about if you feel you're not getting recognized, why don't you put a list of everything you got done that week and say, hey boss, any of these things that stand out as something I did great work on, go get your recognition. Same thing with driver number 2, career development. My managers never talk to me about my career path. Woe is me. One of the things that I cannot stand is victimhood. Realize that you are more in control than you think. What manager wouldn't want to hear, hey, what are you doing Friday afternoon? I want to be the most engaged person here. Can you meet with me to talk about my career path? So we created this tool. I helped a competitor, Modern Survey, create it. If you want to see how engaged you are, go to that link. It's free, and it'll tell you, and more importantly, it'll give you great ideas on what you could do differently. I personally believe that if people are not attending senior leader brown bag bunches or town hall meetings, they give up their right to speak. Get involved. Go to those meetings. Ask your manager for feedback, and most importantly, act on it. Regularly checking in with yourself as part of the resources, part of my website. There are several resources, one of which is a list of reflective statements where you might, am I having fun in my job? Is my job making the best use of my skills and abilities? You might get 5 questions in, just say, I'm in the wrong job, and recast yourself. There are also a couple of engagement checklists. These are things you should be doing monthly to re-engage your employees as a manager or to re-engage yourself as an employee. Make sure that every performance evaluation you do contains a dialogue about, hey, what are you most passionate about? And I'll feed you more of that. Is there anything that's disengaging you? And how can I help?
Right. Well, I also believe that our traditional performance management programs need to be reevaluated, and so that they're designed to build more trust and rapport and listening, as to what Lisa and Sabine talked about earlier, listening, engaging in trust, because I think also employees are very reluctant to fill out a survey if they think it's just going to be a hammer to drive outcomes, and it really should be about a relationship building and about the conversation, not just
Exactly.
a survey.
Well, that's why I believe in the post-survey survey, which is 2 items. My manager used the feedback from the last employee survey to make positive change.
I see.
See that? Now, if I know as a manager that I'm going to be judged by my employees, I'm going to take it seriously. It's not going to be a perfunctory, oh, we need 90% participation. It's going to become something that has life on its own. So you'll laugh at this chart. I focus so much on building a magnetic culture. That was my New York Times bestseller, that I was 6 weeks from the deadline with Career Press to write the virtual manager. And I had a mountain climb set up to climb Mount Blanc. And I called Career Press. I said, can you cut me some slack? Can we move the deadline? And they were unbending. They said, you signed a contract. So I went to Switzerland, I went to Zermatt, and I had more fun writing this book because I'd get up in the morning at 5, I'd go hiking with a memo pad, and I'd essentially take an outline, and then I'd come back to Zermatt, and I'd write a chapter each day. And I'd submit it to my editor in Chicago from Zermatt. So the irony of me writing the virtual manager virtually is palpable.
Wow, that's incredible. That's a great way to write a book.
It is, yeah. And every night after I submitted the chapter, I'd walk down to the local wine shop and I'd get some cheese or sausage and a nice wine and just relax and go to bed early.
Incredible. And so you climbed that mountain there to the left?
I did. I did not summit the Matterhorn. The irony about me being, I've done 5 of the 7 summits. I've been as high as 23,000 feet. That's a mountain in Argentina called Aconcagua. I almost lost my left foot on that mountain to severe frostbite. And thankfully, my buddy, who's a little bit chubby, took my foot, which was frozen, and wrapped it in his belly. Saved my foot.
Wow.
Yeah, we spent 16 days on that mountain, and we, obviously couldn't shower. And I woke up at Berlin Camp, which is the highest camp on that mountain, and I just stared at John's face. we're both just absolutely rancid from all the exercise and no shower. And after about 10 minutes of silence, I said, John, I don't know about you, but I'm getting the blank off this mountain today. And John and I hiked 26.5 miles in a day. We went from 21,500 feet to 5,000 on New Year's Eve. I think we must have had 6 bottles of wine that night.
I'm glad you're still alive there. I don't know if about 26 miles a day. It doesn't sound like a lot of fun.
It was beautiful.
Yeah, I think that brings up a good point, though, Kevin. I mean, with the one thing that the remote workforce is going to bring us, or brings us now, but will be more prevalent in the future, is just the freedom to, be with family, to be in the places that inspire us, that really help us do our best work. And so I think as companies embrace this more and more, we'll find more flexibility in the workplace, and ongoing. So.
Yes, that was my first 7th summit. That's the top of Africa in Tanzania.
Wow.
Yeah, almost 20,000 feet. That was a fun one. We did that in 5 days. And that was my guide, Sierra, who said to me at the bottom of the mountain, he said to the group, the expedition, she goes, I teach you one word that gets you to uhuru. Uhuru means freedom in Swahili. Literally, the top of Kilimanjaro is called freedom. I said, Sierra, what's the word? He goes, pole, pole. I said, what does pole mean? Slowly. And that's one of the secrets to climbing. You don't want to be the jackrabbit. You want to be the tortoise, because it's one foot in front of the other. You need to give your body time to build more red blood cells and thereby process oxygen more efficiently. Mm-hmm. I got to the top of Kili, as it's known, at about 5:30 in the morning with a good friend of mine. And there were only 2 other climbers on the summit. They both were Swiss. And we watched the sun rise over Tanzania, over the Serengeti Plains. It was religious. It was absolutely one of the most beautiful things. We're standing 10,000 feet above the clouds. Yeah, it was great. That's when I got the bug.
Yeah, well, I think it's so vital too, as you talk about your stories and your journeys and your experiences. I think often leaders should take the time to get to know our employees' experiences and things that were life-changing, and things in their life and experience that made a difference for them, to just take the time to build the relationship, get to know our employees. You don't need to get into too much private information, but learn just what was powerful in your past. What are some things, experiences you want to do in the future?
Yeah. How many kids do you have? Where do they go to school? What do you like doing with them? Mm-hmm.
Take a virtual tour of your office place. Take your computer, show where your environment is and who your dogs are and your family.
Yeah.
Hi, Sabine. I think.
Yeah, I was going to say such wise words from your guide. I mean, when you think about that taking it one step at a time, I mean, is a good message for our younger workers nowadays. I mean, that everybody's so anxious to make an impact and climb the ladder or whatever, they'll be successful. But a lot of it is taking those steps, building your competencies, being ready, and that really helps us be engaged for the long term and really drive long-term impact. So, well,
and my guide Sierra, he's there on the right. Every 15 minutes, we started our summit bid at 12:30 in the morning, and he had a lantern, and every 20 minutes he'd go pole, 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 and it just reminded us to just go slowly, and we summited. And there was a Polish Olympian on our team that never made the summit because he went up too quickly.
Yeah. But like I said, I mean, when I was talking earlier in the chat about leadership is setting the cadence or setting the tone. And I mean, that's a great example of Sierra, leading the team to success. I mean, I've been on climbs like that too, and you see people that are the young and the restless, and wanting to run up the hill to show how strong they are and so forth, and then you find them, petering out halfway up the hill, and then they have to break up the team, and somebody has to escort them down because they went too hard.
That happened twice to me on Denali in Alaska.
No.
Wow. It's resiliency. Resiliency is so crucial, and then helping one another. That's why I love that goose story. The back geese, the honk to the front geese.
Yes.
To keep charging ahead and supporting, and then the one goose goes in the back to support the goose that's maybe injured or struggling.
Yes.
It's absolutely vital. That's so, and also I love your style, Kevin, because I think we were talking earlier that you also have to have a sense of humor, right?
Oh, you do. Absolutely. Yep.
Right. A sense of humor in these times, even though it is really critical to acknowledge the seriousness of these times, but also acknowledge the sense of humor and during this time.
Well, the other thing, there were 3 commonalities among my best-in-class customers on engagement. Number one, literally every single one of my top 10% clients had an interview process that was highly scrutinizing. They took my advice that if you're going to take the time and money to build a magnetic culture, only let net people, people that are engaged in. Secondly, they were big believers in continuous improvement. So I could go in and say, hey, you're top 3%. We want to be better than that. And third, they promoted fun. Knowing that the number one reason people leave is job stress, what better medicine than fun?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So there was a lot of techniques as far as recruiting and bringing in the right people. What are the themes that you've or the mistakes and the wins that you've experienced with a lot of your clients in the past, Kevin, as far as identifying the right fit?
Well, so many people choose the victimhood. And one of my favorite blogs last year, and this just made my year, I did a blog called Mea Culpa, which of course in Latin means my bad, my fault, the importance of learning from failure. And I told 3 of the most iconic failure stories. One, Oprah Winfrey, sexually assaulted as a child. She didn't choose victimhood. She took a breath and she kept moving. That's one of my messages. Second, Steven Spielberg, one of the best movie producers of all time, rejected by the LA School of Cinematography twice. He didn't choose victimhood. And my favorite, Walt Disney, they called him in. He was a reporter in Kansas City. He said, Walt, today's your last day. We're terminating you. And Walt Disney said, well, why? And they looked him in the eye and said, you lack imagination. All 3 of those people did not choose victimhood. They kept moving. 2 weeks after that blog came out, I came home to my apartment in Evanston, picked up my mail, and there was a card from a woman I'd never heard of, Adrienne. I opened the card. She goes, Mr. Sheridan, I followed your videos and your blogging for years now, and I had to write to you about your recent blog called Mea Culpa, the importance of learning from failure. It came out just in time. I was about to commit suicide. I'm like, oh my God. I never in my wildest dreams would I guess that my blog saved someone's life.
Yeah.
Well, that brings up a very important point. I think Aaron here is talking about the importance of mental health, particularly during this time, and demonstrating humanity, which relates to our earlier topic. Really understanding, listening, having a sense of there may be some mental health opportunities and EAP programs and support programs, and that we truly care is just so vital right now. Mm-hmm. So vital.
Yeah, it's so important for us to reach out and give that recognition, as we were talking about earlier. I mean, just taking time to, I mean, even when we're sometimes we're just driving down the road, you know, and we see some guy, you know, tailgating us, and we're going, what's wrong with that guy? You know, and they're honking their horn, and, you know, we pull over and they race by, and we're going, oh, geez, man, that guy he's just a, we seem to think negative of it, but we have no idea what's going on in that guy's experience. I mean, we often jump to the fact that, no, he's just a, an asshole or whatever, and we're not thinking about, he could be having an emergency or helping somebody else or whatever. We don't know what he's experiencing or she's experiencing in that car behind us. And so I think that's one of the things that we need to think about on our
well, it's interesting you bring that up, Sam, because for the last year, I've been a volunteer for Big Brothers Big Sisters. And my little, as he's called, it's named Tristan, and he's a 9-year-old mulatto disadvantaged kid. I have had so much fun with him. And I asked him when I did my blog on, if you could choose 10 people's lives to live, who would make your top 10? And Tristan said, I don't want to be any of the 10 because I don't know what else is going on in their life. Is that an insightful young man?
Yeah, that is.
So I'm meeting with him today, and I'm going to surprise him. There's a really nice ice cream shop here in Evanston, and so we're going to go for a walk or play football, and then I'm going to take him out for ice cream, which he'll love.
Nice. Well, I just want to mention here as we're rounding out our forum today that this is really our time for open dialogue on any of the topics that we talked about today. And I just want to mention back to the racial unrest topic. Lisa and I were talking the other day about what can we do? What can we do to make a difference? And I was sharing a story that I had gone to a Home Depot a few days ago. And even though everyone was wearing their masks and had social distancing, I was really impressed with all different types of people and actually having friendly eyes behind the mask and actually saying hello in the parking lot and really just showing humanity and caring and loving for each other and saying hello. And I just think that what an amazing topic, not only in the workplace, but also in our communities.
I thought it was very interesting this week that there was so many public health officials that came out, and I marched last weekend here in Denver around the Black Lives Matter, and I thought it was, wow, here we have been completely social distance and isolated in our homes for the last 2.5 months, and now you've got public health officials coming out and stating that this cause is even more urgently important and how life-threatening. And I think that's another thing to be aware of to your comfort level. I went and had the COVID antibody test, so I'm negative for COVID, and feel like now more emboldened that I can actually go out into the community and participate in a very real way with speaking up about some of the desire to support the rights of the people who need support.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And so as a leader, like with Kevin's
As to what I could do. Sorry, I was answering that question.
Leadership matters. Leadership matters on all of these topics we talked about today. All of these topics, we must be the role model. We must show a different way of leading and have the courage to take the brutally honest feedback and be authentic and real and not just this puppet, not this politically correct puppet all the time, right? I think it's about being authentic. Mm-hmm. So today's session was outstanding.
And just a question for everybody on, when we think about creating a psychological safety or creating as a leader, when we're bringing a diverse team together, and we all know that diversity helps us with innovation and helps us with performance and new ideas and so forth. But especially in light with what's going on now, how do we create that psychological safety among that team and have those crucial conversations to where we're in a safe environment. I mean, what are your thoughts there? What are the key things that we can do?
So I want to speak just a bit to that, because I have done that with, putting together people in a room that would normally be argue, have lots of reason to argue, or that where you're concerned that the conversation is going to divulge into conflict more so in an unhealthy way. And I think it comes back to ensuring that the facilitator is taking a strong stance on the purpose of the conversation, and also controlling the agreements around how we're going to engage with the discussion. And those two things I think are incredibly important, that the facilitator themselves, whoever that person is, be trusted by the group to step in and stand strong for that goal or that purpose in those agreements. I don't, and we could get down into the details, but I think that's really what I have seen these conversations, Sam, fall apart, is that there's just not a common agreement about the purpose of what we're doing together. And some of just working agreements, as Sabine said earlier, that just says this is how we're going to approach this conversation. And it may not, it may not end up being possible to avoid all the discomfort that needs to come out into the conversation. So that's where a good facilitation, I think, comes in, is to allow a certain amount of pain to just be unleashed in the conversation, or disagreement or discomfort.
Well, Sabine, would you mind sharing with us one of those best practices that you put together called Sabine Talks? I would love to hear what Sabine Talks is, and how you facilitated that, and what do those look like? I know you're on mute, but I was just curious if you could share that.
Muted. I'm still okay. I'm off mute. They're called Eat Lunch and Learns. They're about 30 minutes, 35 minutes, where I'm asked to share different techniques that just to help the employees just have better department meetings, office etiquette, just really basic things that people take for granted. I wanted to add something. I was going to add to what Lisa was saying about psychological comfort, being able, I think one of the things that people sometimes are reluctant to speak up is because they're afraid of retaliation. And we want to be able to know that if I am being honest, that this is not going to hurt me. It's not going to, hurt me later on. And that it's a safe zone. This is a safe place where I need you to just be honest, but respectful. We have to always keep the respect, and then you have to also take into consideration the other person. I think Kevin mentioned that in his presentation, I think it was Sam that said that you don't know what the other person is going through, and you're assuming that he's tailgating you or because he wants to follow you, but there's something else. There are other underlying issues that exist there. But yeah, my Sabine Talks are just Sabine Talks, just general topics that concerns the employees. I think my focus is always on employee and community and culture, having them engaged, because I believe that if you love your job, if you enjoy what you do, you're going to do your best work. 100%.
And I think
has to be the right fit for you. And if you're not, then you have to find where you fit in, because you don't want to be unhappy.
I think one of the things that I want to add on to what Sabine is saying about this, that I happen to know on an inside track, is so I mentioned we work together to shape the cultural change initiative in this company, and I was a consultant, and my engagement ended in early May, and so these Sabine Talks have now been given to her as sort of a way to carry the mantle that I was carrying, as I was doing a lot of these monthly talks. And it wasn't like she's replacing me, but I was really, really proud to know that, that they didn't just pick someone in learning and development, to come forward and do this. She's the executive assistant to the CFO. That woman was a huge champion of hers to get her voice heard more in the organization, because it was such a positive and needed voice. So I was kind of always really happy to see that not only do I know she has something really important to say, and that there's all these tips that she can be sharing, but that the credibility of the employees and the trust of the employees goes up because they see she was put in that position.
Well, that demonstrates engagement right there. Well, we are approaching the last 4 minutes of today's forum. Thank you so much, Kevin and Sabine. You guys were rock stars. I mean, seriously, it was amazing. So just want to say a few more things before we wrap up. One, we had some great topics today. Hopefully, as you find these very relevant to our day and time. In traditional employee engagement programs, traditional mindset must change. The paradigm must shift. And I think it's good that we're coming together and sharing and thinking of innovative and thoughtful ideas. All of us, like Kevin mentioned, on social media, there's some great articles. There's some interesting blogs, great ideas that we can all share. So please be engaged and do that. Also, I just want to say that we, as the comp team that have been doing these sessions, I think this is our 10th or 11th one now, we are looking for future speakers. We are looking for future topics that is really relevant and timely right now. What could really make a difference? These are free forums that we share. We do these every Wednesday at 10 a.m. Mountain Time. If you have an idea, if you have a topic, if you have a speaker that you think would be amazing, in addition to our return speakers, please let us know. We are listening. You can email us. You can go on compteam.net. You can communicate with us. And then also, like I said earlier, they're recorded, and you can share these and put them on your social media. And then also just want to mention, we have many free gifts that are also found on compteam.net. So you can email Sam if you don't see it on the website. We can offer free complimentary TMA methods. So Sam, did you want to briefly talk about what that is about?
Yeah, so yeah, and this is one thing that we've been offering free for the past few engagements or speeches or forums, and so I have a few more to get out this week. But what this is, we were talking a lot about people, what really drives them, what makes them engaged at work, what do they like to do, and that's what this TMA method, this assessment, focuses on. I mean, what are their passions and their drives? What are they really good at? And when you take this assessment and also if you give these to your employees, you get to know them a little bit better about in the ways that they like to contribute. So it can be very impactful.
Right. So back to Kevin's point, how to hire the right people for the right seat. These types of tools are progressive, they're innovative, they're different, they're not your traditional hiring methods. Also, things around career mobility and helping people to aspire to their career ambitions and goals. These types of tools are awesome. And then we've had many former speakers with other gifts as well. So we highly encourage, take a look at those. Perhaps when you're multitasking, take a listen. And we encourage you to participate. So the ongoing conversation. So if anybody has any follow-up questions, let us know. We are going to go through this chat and make sure that we were able to address any questions, commentary, perhaps reach out to you if there's anything else that you'd like us to support you with in your organizations as a leader, as a HR leader. We love to follow up with you and help you with your cultural transformation during these times. So thank you so much. Any final comments, team?
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone,
for listening.
Yeah.
All right. Get outside, enjoy those outdoors, and have a sense of humor, but also get to know one another and care for each other. So thank you so much. We appreciate you, and have an excellent weekend.